We're here back in the Fantasy Bar week 8 on tap. 6 of my favorite plays ready for you to go on FanDuel and DraftKings, including a couple wide receivers under 6,000, I think, are in great spots this week. We've got some correlations in some games you might not expect. We're going to answer the question, what high-end quarterback should I be rolling with this week? And a beast of the week for you under 6,000, I think, goes nuts this week. Who are we talking about? Only one way to find out. Time to belly up to the Fantasy Bar. Welcome in, guys. Week 8 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Can't believe the season almost half over already. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out this week's video. Before we get into the plays, couple housekeeping items. First off, and most importantly, that thumbs up button. You guys have been killing it with the thumbs up. Greatly appreciate that. Helps us out tremendously over on YouTube. That's the tip jar here to continue bringing you this free video. Continue to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and check us out over at scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. All right, week 8, let's get into it. Not as many buys this week, so a lot of games, a lot of choices to be made, and we've narrowed it down to my 6 favorite plays. Let's start at the running back position with Travis Etienne of Jacksonville. Now, Etienne been going nuts of late. 6 touchdowns for him here over the last 3 weeks, and this spot may go ignored here. People are going to look at this matchup with Pittsburgh, traditionally a very solid defense, and likely avoid Travis Etienne. I think that's a mistake here. Now, Pittsburgh been much better against the pass. You look at some of the stats, they've really done a good job holding down opposing passing games, but the rushing attacks have really gotten to them. They're giving up 142 rushing yards per game this season, bottom 8 in fantasy points allowed, rushing yards allowed to the running back position. And as we mentioned, Etienne been a man on fire, averaging over 28 DraftKings points per game over the last 3 weeks. I think he does it here once again at very minimal ownership. Travis Etienne, one of my favorite plays for week 8. All right, wide receiver up next with some value. Guy we've seen before here in the Fantasy Bar. We're talking Josh Downs of the Colts. Now, this rookie quickly becoming one of my favorites here. Everything trending up, the production, the snaps, the route participation, and yet the price remains stagnant here. Only ticked up a couple $100 here on DraftKings, remains under 5,000, and remains to me one of the best values in the entire industry right now. 13 or more DraftKings points now in 4 of his last 5 games. And coming off that big game last week, career high 125 receiving yards, 26.5 DraftKings points. It's just been such a great match with Gardner Minshew, who's not afraid to take shots down the field. We look at the Saints, great matchup here. Yes, they're a good defense, but they have been awful against slot receivers, giving up a ton of production. Their slot corners giving up the most touchdowns in the NFL, and bottom 5 in targets and receiving yards allowed to this position. Downs spends about 85% of the time in the slot. Great matchup here, great production on this great rookie, and a fantastic price tag. Let's take advantage with the value with Josh Downs. All right, quarterback on the high end. We got a lot of options here. I am rolling with Jaylen Herz of Philadelphia. Now, this is going to be a tough choice for people. Normally, I like to give you a cheaper quarterback here. Not many that I really love in the cheap seats here. I would much rather spend it. All 3 of these guys, fantastic options. Lamar Jackson against Arizona, coming off that big game against Detroit. Patrick Mahomes had a massive game last week. He gets Denver. Both of those guys certainly in play, but I'm going to go with Hertz here. And I think at the end of the day, once we get to Sunday, Hertz likely the lowest owned of these 3. Now, a matchup against Washington, been very good for Jaylen Herz. 7 passing touchdowns over the last 3 games against this team, averaging almost 27 DraftKings points per game. We know Washington been an absolute disaster. Bottom 5 in passing yards allowed, passing touchdowns, fantasy points. And the thing I really like, there's not a team in the NFL that has allowed more rushing yards to the quarterback position than the Washington Commanders. So you add it all up, don't think you can go wrong with any of the 3 here, but I think Hertz, best combination of matchup, upside. Jaylen Herz, my favorite quarterback here for week 8. All right, a guy you saw last week that I want to go right back to, and some correlation here with Jaylen Herz. We're going to the other side with wide receiver Terry McLaurin. Now, while Sam Howell let us down, Terry McLaurin continues to put up numbers here. So let's go right back to him this week against Philadelphia, a matchup that he has absolutely thrived in. The last 3 meetings with this team, 22 receptions, over 300 yards receiving and averaging almost 22 DraftKings points a game. We know Philadelphia very, very good against opposing running games, very, very bad against opposing passing games. We know they'll put points on the board. We know Washington likely going to have to throw a ton here. Philadelphia giving up the 5th most receiving yards to this position, the most receptions in the entire league at 112, the most receiving touchdowns in the league as well at 9 already, 2 wide receivers. So great spot here, great spot for stacking. Even if you don't, Terry McLaurin remains a solid value option here in the mid-range on both sides. All right, let's go to tight end next. Another guy you've seen in here a lot, and I love him. We're talking some Darren Waller of the Giants. So some concerns here, questionable tag for Darren Waller. That's going to be a weekly thing for this guy, really starting to get it going here. And the Jets are a good spot for tight ends. We'll get to that here in a minute. But Waller, 26 targets now over the last 3 games alone. And he's turned that in over 16 DraftKings points per game here, whether it's been Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. Does not matter here. Darren Waller finally becoming the focal point of this Giants passing game. We mentioned the Jets. We know very good defensively, but against tight ends, league high 5 touchdowns so far already allowed to this position. And shockingly, only the Denver Broncos have given up more fantasy points to this position than have the New York Jets. I know they've had some tough opponents, specifically Travis Kelce, but it's a spot we can take advantage of against a good defense like we did last week with Mark Andrews against Detroit. I think we get similar production here this week out of Darren Waller against the New York Jets. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for Week 8. Before we do that, let's continue with our Beast of the Week contest. Easy to play. All you got to do, make sure you've clicked that thumbs up button if you have not already. Then head to the comment section and guess fantasy points on DraftKings for my Beast of the Week. Whoever has the closest guess, you're going to win yourself a free month. That's right, a month, not just a week. We've upgraded it to 4 weeks of free RotoGrinders Premium NFL. So get that guess in there. And while you're down there, who's your favorite play here? 13 games on the main slate. You got to narrow it down to one. Who is your absolute favorite play? Who is your Beast of the Week? Sound off in those comment sections. All right, let's get to it with my favorite play for Week 8. You know, Matt's Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more running back. I promised you under 6,000 on DraftKings, and we're going to do just that with my favorite play on the board. We're talking running back Breece Hall of the Jets, this week's Beast of the Week. All right, so we get some nice value here with Breece Hall, along with some correlation with our Darren Waller play. And for the Jets, really starting to take off. See what I did there, wink, wink. But taking over this backfield, and what a matchup he gets here with the New York Giants. Tough matchup last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Still goes over 20 DraftKings points. That's now almost 26 DraftKings points per game for him over the last 2. And the Giants, like we mentioned, been awful against the run. 2nd most rushing yards allowed this season. 3rd most rushing touchdowns given up. I think the ascension continues here. The prices have not caught up here. Take advantage. Yes, he'll be popular this week, but with good reason, guys. When there's chalk, sometimes and most of the time, it's for a reason, because they are a great play. We found you some lower owned spots in some other positions here. Don't be afraid to eat some chalk sometime, especially in your cash games where you're not worried about any of this ownership. Add it all up here. Breece Hall in a great spot. I think he knocks it out of the park here this week and goes over 30 DraftKings points. The bold proclamation here. Breece Hall, my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll do it here for Week 8 in the Fantasy Bar. As always, any comments, questions, feedback, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. You can also reach out and follow me on Twitter at Beermakersfan. Don't forget, your guess for fantasy points for Breece Hall on DraftKings for a chance to win an entire month absolutely free of RotoGrinders Premium NFL. All right, we got NBA 6-packs going off every Monday and Friday, so make sure you subscribe for that if you play NBA. My Pints and Picks video coming out tomorrow with 2 of my favorite NFL bets on the season. We are 9-5 on that video with those bets, so make sure you're checking that out. And lastly, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio every Sunday night, 6 to 9 Eastern. STL Cardinals, Eric Beinfort, and myself going through all of the games, all of the fantasy impact. Make sure you are checking that out every Sunday night over on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. All right, that'll do it here for Week 8 for RotoGrinders.com. I am Beer saying salut. Thank you so much for watching. Best of luck here in Week 8, and and we will see you.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, FanDuel, or any other daily fantasy sports, make sure you check out the current videos playlist.